Welcome, everyone. Great to have you all on board. Welcome to our webinar on social entrepreneurship. Today, on the occasion of the first online version of the Skull World Forum, I'm sure many of you have had already the exercise to go through many of these webinars before. On the occasion of this crisis, we're meeting in a very different setting. But we had almost 900, almost 1,000 signups for this webinar, and it's really incredibly humbling to see the amazing reception for this topic. So thank you for joining today. We will go through this webinar together with our panelists and with some new insights from our research. My name is Daniel Nowak, and I'm a managing director of Yunus Social Business. In this next hour, we will be discussing how social entrepreneurs can transform a company into a force for good. We will do so from a practitioner, researcher, and ecosystem angle, so we'll give you all the perspectives to this topic. The webinar is coming in two parts. We will first outline lessons learned from social entrepreneurs. We'll hear from them live here on the webinar, but also through the research we've conducted with over 50 social entrepreneurs across the world. And the second part will focus on the role of social entrepreneurship, especially in this time of crisis around the coronavirus, and how we can support social entrepreneurs in the months and years to come. Before we start, a few notes here on tech. You can send us and our panelists questions through the Q&A section that you should see in a control panel to your right on your screen. Please do understand that due to the high volume of participants here, we will probably not be able to answer them all, but we'll make sure to provide answers to the Q&As on our blog section at www.yunussb.com in the aftermath to this webinar. You can also find the handouts for today's session on the control panel, which includes an executive summary of our interviews we've conducted. So feel free to download that after the webinar to take something home with you. And finally, one little note here. It has been pointed out to me in the preparation for this webinar that this strange lamp in my back has a strange resemblance to the coronavirus. It's ironic, but it's super coincidental. It's just the only piece of furniture that my wife let me choose, and it's from one famous Swedish furniture manufacturer from who we'll be hearing today as well. Well, on that note, let me give you a quick intro about Yunus Social Business, our organization. We're a philanthropic impact investor for Latin America, Africa, and India, really investing into social businesses for the base of the pyramid since the last 10 years. So social businesses that benefit people in developing and emerging economies in the areas of agriculture, clean water, healthcare, and education. But we're also building impactful social businesses from scratch with leading companies around the world as joint ventures. These corporate social businesses build on the industry experience of our corporate partners, and they tackle some of the most pressing problems that we face today, humanity. That much about ourselves as an organization. Now right to the topic, acting on corporate purpose. When we started this whole research together with our great partners INSEAD, HFC, Schwab Foundation, Porticus, and really a diverse and super great steering committee of sector organization and researchers, the world was looking quite differently from what it does today. We had some initial rumblings about stakeholder capitalism and how we can get companies to be more purpose-driven, but it was still kind of a tiny movement. We've had people realize that poverty, inequality, and hunger aren't simply problems of the global south. They're all connected. But it was just a small group of leaders like Paul Pullman or even Jasper Brodin realizing that climate change takes us all, including, and most importantly, including companies as one of the key actors in the economy to solve these issues that we're facing. So a year ago, we had a few crazy ones that did want to act, but for many, the reality hadn't yet sunk in. And today here, we talk with each other in this setting here, and a lot has happened since then. I think today it has become painfully apparent in a thunderous moment of this crisis that we're all intimately connected to each other. That what happens in China very much affects us here in Europe, and what happens in Europe affects African nations, affects Latin America, affects the US and Canada. The one silver lining in this is that during this Corona crisis, we have seen companies step up and live their responsibility. This concrete action is not really just a short-term effect. We think that it's going to deeply change how people think about the purpose of their companies. It really changed the narrative that, for example, Dyson switched from producing vacuum cleaners to medical ventilators, that L'Oreal switched from producing beauty products to gel sanitizers, that Sharp switched from producing TVs to face masks. Now, during Corona, we have seen how companies are starting to use their assets and resources for the greater good in this very imminent crisis. And we're seeing how it changes how employees talk about their companies and how executives think about the purpose of their companies. And this is exactly what social entrepreneurs have been doing for years. So what are social entrepreneurs? We use a definition that describes social entrepreneurs as an entrepreneurial employee who develops a profitable new product, service, or business model that creates value for society and her company. This can include working with social entrepreneurs to lean on and/or scale their model through the company's value chain, or concretely, to work with social entrepreneurs as suppliers or as service providers. But it may also include just setting up new initiatives from scratch within the organization. Social entrepreneurs help their employers meet sustainability commitments and create value for customers and communities in ways that are built to last. So the business aspect to it is important to build a sustainable financial model that can sustain itself, but use the assets and resources of the company to create an impact-first initiative. Now, for research, this definition is great, but it still keeps things a bit more abstract. So let's hear from social entrepreneurs themselves. Joining us today is Dr. Harald Musser. He is the head of Novartis Social Business. Harald has been leading Novartis' efforts to bring healthcare to those who are most in need. So with that, I'll hand over to Harald. Thanks so much for joining us today. We've had the chance to talk ever since we've published the first round of this research in Davos. Thanks for being on this call today. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And I guess we start, welcome everybody. I guess we start with a short video, if possible.
Of course.
The Healthy Family Programs are innovative business models that build local, sustainable healthcare capabilities for base-of-the-pyramid populations. They address social issues that impact access to healthcare, such as education and distribution. Started in India in 2007, Healthy Family Programs have since been replicated in Vietnam, Kenya, and Uganda. Health educators inform local communities about disease prevention and prevalent conditions, while also promoting better hygiene and nutrition. Local doctors provide free diagnostics, and Novartis ensures availability of affordable, good-quality medicines. The Healthy Family portfolios focus on the specific disease burden and healthcare needs of each country. Since 2007, Healthy Family Programs have brought health education to more than 50 million people and helped diagnose and treat over 3 million patients. Beyond healthcare benefits, these social business models provide people in local communities with additional skills, jobs, and income. We plan to expand Healthy Family to additional countries in the coming years.
Good. So thank you very much. So what Healthy Families is about, this is one of the legacy programs that Novartis Social Business enhances We have 4 years ago morphed several commercial medicine programs into one unit called Novartis Social Business. And social business for us is putting equal weight on financial returns as well as on social returns. Very concretely, that means we invest $1, we earn that dollar back through our business operations, and as you've just seen in India and in Vietnam, we reach 3 people with that through health education. Our business models are rooted in communities, and we collaborate with partners who share our purpose. In that sense, we treat people, not diseases. In 2019, 800 people supported us in our team. We've reached 10 million people, 15 million patients, and had products moving on the ground in 33 low and middle income countries. Over those past 4 years, we've increased our reach significantly. We are intrapreneurs because we support the wider stakeholder perspective of Novartis. So you may be wondering, how does success look like? And I always tell my team, for us, we know we have been successful when we are redundant, because then the wider Novartis organization, the core business, is appreciating and implementing societal outcomes, societal externalities in the usual way of doing business. Maybe this is a good first introduction, and I'm keen to share more information during the course of the discussion.
Great, thanks, Harald. Yeah, thanks and congratulations for the amazing work. Thanks for jumping on board today. We'll hear more from you in the panel discussion, but thanks for that work, and we know it's not a walk in the park. Next in our webinar here is Åsa Saxström-Feld. While Harald has helped Novartis to set up an internal unit for social businesses, other social entrepreneurs like Åsa have helped their companies to connect with social entrepreneurs, startups really that have a social or environmental mission. Åsa is manager for IKEA Social Entrepreneurship BV, and she leads IKEA's efforts to partner and do business with social entrepreneurs working for equality, inclusion, and decent livelihoods. Åsa, also thanks to you for joining us today, and over to you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for inviting me. I will share very briefly about IKEA and what we do at IKEA Social Entrepreneurship, and then I will go into how this connects to intrapreneurship and the discussion that will follow today. So, IKEA's vision, you might have heard it before. It is the compass that keeps us grounded and focused. And together with our values, the vision lives in the everyday efforts of all our co-workers. And I would say in challenging situations like this one that we're living through now, it gives us good guidance in how to work together. Our business direction is to be affordable, accessible, and to create positive impact for people, planet, and the society. But what does positive mean, especially for people and society? I personally believe that this is where we all have to learn together as a global community. Next, please. So one way we're trying to create positive impact and to learn is to partner with social entrepreneurs around the world. And we work with the ones who work with and for people who are vulnerable and marginalized, and that can be different in different regions. And we work with the ones that focus on livelihoods, equality, and inclusion, as you mentioned, Daniel. So we started by doing business with social entrepreneurs, both when it comes to products and materials in our supply chain, as well as services more close to our customers in the communities some 8 years ago. And we then realized that there is growing potential to work with big social challenges and systems change in the ecosystem of social entrepreneurship. And we have partnered with organizations like Ashoka Acumen and yourself. And concretely, what we do is to work with accelerator programs, impact investments, and social innovation projects, both inside and outside of our value chain, always having the same target group and impact in mind. And next picture, please. At IKEA, part of our ways of working is what we call entrepreneurship of the many. And this has always been a way for us to innovate and solve challenges close to where the problem is, so that we then can share and scale what works across our own ecosystem of IKEA companies and partners. When it comes to what we do at IKEA and social entrepreneurship, one very important component is to engage our co-workers as coaches and advisors in the partnerships and in the accelerator programs. And based on the feedback we get after they have experienced these programs is that they get to step out of their own comfort zone. They get to learn more about systems change and about social impact. They get super inspired by the passion and the speed of the entrepreneurs. And they bring back new capabilities and maybe sometimes even mindsets into our business. And in this way, they can contribute to the whole movement of social intrapreneurship by both engaging and inspiring others, as well as sharing new learnings and ways of working that can contribute to our overall goal, which is to be positive for people, planet, and the society. So I'm looking forward to discuss this further.
Great, thank you so much, Åsa. And also a big thank you to Harald and Åsa for standing ready to answer many of our questions during our research. You were some of the guinea pigs to some extent for us to understand across the sectors how social entrepreneurship can really transform companies. And I think what you just shared, that it actually does change mindsets and the way people think about their work and the excitement they bring back to their job is one of the great outcomes of working as a social entrepreneur and working with a purpose-driven approach. Before we jump into our panel, I wanted to take the opportunity to run you through our research findings. And before I do so, a big thank you to the team that's listening in now that has been really working in an Herculean effort to get this done in the last couple of months. And it's really been a testament to teamwork here to get 3 pillars completed in just 1 year of work. So to walk you through the 3 pillars, the research was focused on these 3 aspects. One is qualitative research, so interviews with 50+ social entrepreneurs across the world. Quantitative research, which is focused on making the business case for social entrepreneurship, which means connecting social entrepreneurship to performance metrics of companies. And the last one is entrepreneurship support. How can we build support mechanisms for social entrepreneurs within the companies? The first one that I want to go into now is our qualitative research. In that work, we have looked to identify companies that have initiatives that could be determined as social entrepreneurship. We were actually surprised to find as many as we did, and the list is still growing. So almost 200 companies that we've identified, 75 companies that we've contacted, and the other amazing thing was that even 53 were able to talk to us. So a really great response rate, which shows the collaborative aspects of this nascent sector. During these interviews, we've asked the social entrepreneurs, what are the main benefits that you see in working with social entrepreneurship and in doing these initiatives? And as also highlighted, employee engagement, job satisfaction, and talent attraction is one of the key benefits that we've discovered. Almost all of them, or 3/4 of the social entrepreneurs, actually highlighted this as a benefit that they had seen in their organization. Another one, which was similarly important and where we were surprised that as many were actually also reporting this, is that social entrepreneurship leads to mindset shifts, culture change, and even kicks off corporate transformation towards going into an aspect where you think differently about why your company exists. Also was sharing that IKEA wants to be planet and people and society positive. That is a very ambitious goal, and ultimately also a goal that we see all companies moving towards, and social entrepreneurship has been a catalyst to make that happen. We like to talk about social entrepreneurs being a Trojan horse. I mean, usually you know Trojan horses from military backgrounds. Obviously, social entrepreneurs work with limited violence, but definitely trying to sneak in a hidden agenda into the organization and acting or leading by action, leading by example. Another benefit that was reported by almost half of all respondents was that it does spur business innovation. So it actually brings in expertise, and it brings in new ways of looking at how you can apply your products and services to meaningful target groups and to meaningful problems. Another one is that it reaches new markets and new customers. It enables a company to tap into entirely new geographies and new markets. And the last one is that it does improve corporate brand equity. Later on, we will go a bit more into details on our quantitative research, which tried to quantify those benefits. At the moment, obviously based on the interviews with the social entrepreneurs, but we're working and we're releasing today a research piece that is shedding more light on this when it comes to the actual quantification of these benefits. In the interviews, we found a couple of really inspiring correlations. We found that more than 90% of those initiatives that were aligned with core strategy enjoyed C-level buy-in. It has to be said that C-level buy-in was one of the key success factors that was mentioned by social entrepreneurs. If you don't have the buy-in of your board, it's hard to mobilize resources internally and put it on the priority list. But in order to get that C-level buy-in, social entrepreneurs were saying that it has to be closely aligned with the strategy of the company. So it has to matter to where the company wants to go in the future. Compelling narratives helped to build that C-level buy-in. All initiatives that received this buy-in also mentioned storytelling as a key success factor. Autonomy is a great driver for success, where those initiatives that were set up as separate business units or even standalone entities mention it as a key success factor. And then for those initiatives that were older than 10 years, the vast majority, more than half of them, reported that external partnership turned out to be a key success factor in scaling their initiative. Another one angle that we looked into is that we as Yunus Social Business, we follow a very strict definition of social business, which was basically a fully impact-focused way of solving issues in a business way, which means that investors can get their investment back, but profits have to stay with the social business to further scale the impact of this social business initiative. We were also looking at, well, what does it actually then do for the company when you stay pure, when you really stay on focus on social businesses? And we found that non-dividend social businesses outperform the other initiatives we've interviewed on innovation benefits and on employee engagement by quite a bit. So more than 2x on innovation benefits and more than 40% on employee engagement. Most importantly, also when it comes to triggering corporate transformation towards a force for good, it shows that social businesses are more effective in triggering that transformation than other initiatives. You can obviously download all this research at our website, Yunus Social Business, and then Business as Unusual, and we encourage you to take a look at the gradually growing research base. But for now, I want to hand it over to our co-founder and CEO, Saskia Bruysten, who's going to moderate and lead the panel together with Åsa, Harald, and Ketel. Over to you, Saskia.
Perfect, Dan. Thank you so much. And Åsa, Harald, and Ketel, can I please ask you onto the panel? So please turn your cameras on.
Hi. Hello.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Before we jump in, what I'd actually like to do is to do a little poll, because we have so many wonderful people in the room. There are over 482 people that are attending this, and we wanted to get a little bit of a feeling who the audience is, who's listening. So the question is, and something should be popping up on your screen right now. So we need you to interact with us right now. So the question is, are you a social intrapreneur? And then you can select one of the following: social intrapreneur, social entrepreneurs outside of the corporation, corporate employee, NGO representative, or other. Please now put in your answer. So you just have to click on there and then submit, and then we should see your answers coming in. Okay, we see the poll coming together. Pretty good. We see that we have around 10–11% that are actually corporate social intrapreneurs. We see about 17–18% that are social entrepreneurs. 25% are corporate employees, at 17% NGO representatives, and 30% roughly represent everything else. So great, we already have some social entrepreneurs with us. We have also quite some social entrepreneurs with us, and from the corporate employee number, I actually see a lot of people that may be interested in becoming corporate social entrepreneurs as well. So wonderful. So let's jump right into the panel. And Asa, I'd like to start with you actually in this case. So I think pretty much everyone here on the panel is convinced that corporations do have a role to play in solving some of those key challenges of our generation, like climate change and inequality. But now speaking exactly about social intrapreneurship, what do you think the role of social intrapreneurship within corporations should be to attack those challenges?
Yes, as you rightly said, the challenges we stand in front of, they are all at a scale that require collaboration, and no one player can solve it alone. So I think one of the very important roles for a social intrapreneur is to dare to create unlikely collaborations, to work across different spaces, to dare to be different, and use the entrepreneurial approach to co-create new ways of working and new solutions. And I think it's going to be increasingly important that we focus on this. And maybe lastly, what I think it could be at the core is to create space for reflection and learning, so we don't recreate the same challenges again, and look into unintended consequences, which often happens when we try to solve one big challenge. We unintentionally create another big challenge. So it would be the big issues I see.
Okay, fantastic. So that's helpful. So maybe over to you, Harald. I think we also all, it seems like people here on the panel that are working in social entrepreneurship believe that it really has an impact on society. But the question is, does it not only have an impact on society, but actually an effect on the corporation, and can it change the corporation as a whole to become one of those forces for good, as we're all talking about? So maybe, Harald, to specify my question a little bit. So we've heard in our research that over 61% of the social entrepreneurs that we interviewed actually said that the social entrepreneurship initiative that they had inside their corporation actually shifted mindsets and actually started the transformation. So I'd love to hear from you, Harald, how you've seen that happen at Novartis.
Thank you very much, Saskia. And let me quote what your colleague Daniel said about the Trojan horse and limited violence. We do indeed have, occasionally at least, step on people's toes a little bit. So there's a certain level of violence always included in order to reach changes within the corporation. Let me briefly mention what those changes are about. I mean, when we started, for example, this Healthy Family program back in 2007, that was a highly risk-taking approach. And it was some really senior person, Olivier Jarry, who was sent to India to build a business close to the base of the pyramid. And the reason why that happened was that Professor Prahalad provoked the executive committee of Novartis that there indeed is a fortune to make at the base of the pyramid. So that's why the company started this, and ever since, tirelessly, people have worked, sometimes tilting at windmills, internally especially, in order to get something off the ground. Only after 30 months, the business approach broke even financially and could therefore gradually expand to what you've just seen now in the video. Now, what has resulted from this initiative and several other initiatives that we have morphed into social business? 2 years ago, the company has been working on what we call the access principles. And they have been launched 1.5 years ago. And the access principles in Novartis constitute of 3 pillars. One pillar is on research and development to include the real health needs also of vulnerable populations in the research and development process more proactively. That new innovation needs to have, as a second pillar, needs to have an access strategy in place before the launch of a new product or intervention. And last but not least, that we selectively engage in health system strengthening interventions. So that is a significant change because it expands responsibility for an access agenda to the entire company. And it's now on us and many to help fulfill this. And the second important thing I want to mention is that in November last year, the company has announced a new sub-Saharan Africa strategy. That means to basically carve out sub-Saharan Africa in business unit terms and deal with it as one Novartis, so that there's no differentiation anymore between a unit like oncology, the generics business, or the traditional pharmaceuticals business, and gives that unit a new steering parameter, a new steering metric, namely numbers of patients reached. That's a big first step into a direction to reaching more people and to do good for society. The fascinating thing now is the social business unit, and I mentioned beforehand, ultimately we want to become redundant. We are at a crossroads. We see there is a lot of willingness to support from now increased attention that senior executives in the company have on us. And while the willingness is high, there's also a downside to that. The question is, are the capabilities, is the necessary understanding of what we've done and how we've done it, is that available? You can compare this if you look at a tennis player and a table tennis player. They both play with the ball, they both have a racket or that, yet the technique is not identical. So there needs to be some training and awareness and internal capacity building if you wish to make that happen. And in order to really scale up towards the broader enterprise, there is one important additional component. Let me mention that. And it will resonate with most of you in the webinar because you come from an intrapreneur, entrepreneur, or NGO perspective. In a small entrepreneurial organization, oftentimes one person is doing 3 jobs or 3 different job descriptions in terms of the big multinational company. Now, if now all the willingness kicks in, those 3 jobs will be reduced to 1 job of this person maybe. So that transition into the next growth phase needs to be orchestrated, it needs to be managed, and this is a huge change process that oftentimes big corporations underestimate. Let me pause here. I hope that gives an initial answer to your questions, Oscar.
Absolutely, Harald. I think that was really helpful. I mean, just to see that obviously the access principles which you now use across your entire business in some shape or form have really started in the sort of social entrepreneurial initiative is just a great sign to show how that social entrepreneurial initiative can try something out in a small way and then make that available to the entire corporation and change the way the whole corporation does their business, which obviously can have a much larger impact than just the small sliver business that we have on the side. So that's really great to see. Thank you, Harald. And actually, Asa, I want to also follow up with you on that whole question of transforming a corporation into a force for good, because if we look at the case of IKEA, I mean, it's quite interesting. IKEA is pretty much owned by a foundation. Like almost 100%, if I understand correctly. IKEA Foundation in turn gives out hundreds of millions every year for social causes. IKEA, the company, has made commitments towards climate change, etc. And of course, then on top you have the IKEA Social Entrepreneurship Initiative, which you head up. So let's put it that way. That sounds for me like a little bit of force for good. But how would you say that? Like, what is missing for IKEA really to be a force for good? Or let's say, what do your critics say? And what is between IKEA and being 100% force for good in your eyes?
Well, I guess looking into our strategic direction and becoming affordable, accessible, and positive for people, the planet, and the society is not something you can do instantly. It's a huge transformation that has started, and we are well on our way in many areas. And of course, we have a long way to go in many areas. And I think maybe in the past, we have not been as transparent with our neither our goal setting and ambitions nor where we are on the pathway going there. But I think that is changing, and that we are intentionally working very much closer to all our stakeholders. We want to be very humble and transparent with our learnings, and to include everyone on this journey. And we are reporting very transparently now on where we are in those different ambitions.
I think that's helpful to make. So basically, the last missing link is transparency and really working towards those targets and making that very clear on the outside, what your intention is and how far you are along on that one. So I'd like to actually get you as an audience back involved again, because I know people are on webinars usually drifting off. So one question that I have to all of you in the room, does your organization that you're active in already encourage or support social entrepreneurship? So you can answer that if you're a company representative or if you work for a large NGO. Even if you work as a social entrepreneur, is, let's say, our new initiatives actually encouraged from the inside? Tell us. Okay. Interesting. So we see the poll, I mean, poll is not finished, but we see the tendency that around 40% say yes, these kinds of topics like social entrepreneurship are encouraged, or you're planning to encourage them, and only 15% are saying no. So that's really interesting, because that's to a certain extent in contrast to what our research has brought out. I'm assuming that probably not everyone is in a large organization, but also the social entrepreneurs have said yes here. Because what we've actually found out, interestingly, in our research is that 80% of the intrapreneurs that we interviewed said that internal hurdles were the hardest part for them to overcome. So it was more difficult to make the case internally than, say, bring clean drinking water to the bottom of the pyramid, which we found a very interesting find in our research. So good that here in the audience, we have lots of people that have a much more positive organizational background that they're part of. So we can take the poll away. Coming back to the panel then. Harald, I know especially in your case that you were just alluding to it briefly, that Novartis Social Business had to start in a somewhat clandestine way, so a little bit behind the scenes, because you didn't right away have the CEO buy-in. Maybe you can tell me how you really made the case internally to make this still so successful.
I mean, Novartis Social Business has been an organization which was morphed through several existing legacy programs, if you wish, and I came into the company with yet another social business type of business model, and I took the advantage to basically convince people who were working in those areas that jointly we would be stronger, have more internal bargaining power, so to speak, and move out of this clandestine area into a more meaningful or more substantial unit. Now this comes, so we just did it. We didn't ask for permission. I also did not want to go through 4 committees and get approval for something which is basically a very obvious thing to do. So this is sometimes a little bit of success factor to just do it and not ask for permission. You can always apologize later. Now, with that, of course, there comes a certain risk, and the risk is that you move too quickly out of this secret zone and you attract too much of internal company attention at the moment in time. And what do I mean with that? You all know the saying, success has many fathers, failures is an orphan. Yeah, so while we within the small unit have just recently again celebrated failure and shared the learnings, and basically some people were looking at us as we were coming from planet Mars. We celebrated that. Now, at the same moment in time, we moved from the table tennis into the real tennis world, and we need to now make sure that this transformation process I alluded to in my last statement is happening, is recognized to be a significant change process, and that we translate all the positive intent into meaningful societal outcomes and properly go about measuring those as well.
Yeah, I think a good learning, that's where the intrapreneur becomes an entrepreneur by not asking for permission. I think that's a very important learning. And before we move to sort of the Corona part of the panel, which I want to also spend a little bit of time on, Catel, obviously you coming from INSEAD and heading the Hoffman Institute at INSEAD, just from an academic perspective, what do you think that we have to do to educate the leaders of the future? So what is basically needed to inspire more social entrepreneurship within those companies?
Thank you, Saskia. I'm happy to be here. And as I couldn't click on the button when you were making the poll, I'd like to introduce also myself as and the Hoffman Institute as the intrapreneurial force within INSEAD to try to transform INSEAD, to transform business education with C-level and board support, with a strong commitment to promote business as a force for good. So it's not just in corporation that we can find these forces. I just wanted to put that out there first. So I think the first thing we need to inspire others are role models. And here we have Åsa and Harald. You've, I think, unearthed or brought to the fore many more in the report. I think that is important. And to accompany that, we also need more research and more knowledge in terms of their own expertise. So having more cases that we can bring in the classroom, and also understanding what works and what doesn't work through these experiences. Right now, there is not that much research on social intrapreneurship, which is why we were interested to join that research project with you. I would argue that we would need to learn more about what hasn't worked, what doesn't work, when some who've tried have failed as well, because this is what our students are asking us. So first, as an academic institution, we need more of this knowledge. And the person who took part from INSEAD to the research is Asa Serb, and she's a PhD student. What's important also is that this knowledge involves the next generation of faculty members of academics, such as Anna. So it's making sure that the next generation of faculty members also focus on this research to, fill the pipeline of research and make sure that we bring that in the classroom. The second point I wanted to make as an academic institution is we need to bring this topic at the core of our curricula, so that they're not just, an afterthought, but we really integrate sustainability and social impact in the core courses that we teach at the school, so that everybody who comes on our campus is both made aware of their responsibility, but is also equipped from all the parts of the toolbox to go and then do it, irrespective of the industry that they will join or the type of jobs that they will have. And that concretely means that we need to bring live cases in the classroom For instance, we are developing partnerships with the Unjani clinics in South Africa so that our students can really try the toolbox through experiential learning, helping social enterprise to, for instance, increase access to healthcare. They need to really have as many touch points as possible into what it means to try to integrate societal progress in an organization. And finally, on the education, making sure that it's not just during the experience on campus, but through lifelong learning, that we continue to engage our alumni community so that we share with them the advances of research and pass on that knowledge to also inspire them at different points of their career.
Totally, Kata. I think integrating into research, integrating it into teaching, making it practical, I think some of the very important lessons from what you were just said. So I know that everyone's also burning to have a little bit of a discussion around Corona and how this is actually affecting our social entrepreneurial activities and corporations as a whole. So what I want to do very quickly is a third poll question, which is, where will the state of capitalism be at the end of this Corona crisis? Do you think we will be closer to a better capitalism? Will we be closer to a worse capitalism, so focus again back only on profit and nothing else? Or are you still undecided? Would love to get your view, to just get a little bit the feeling in the room. And as that's happening, also want to ask that question very briefly to the panelists. So please, every one of you just spend like 30 seconds to a minute to say, how is COVID affecting your work right now? And how do you think we as social entrepreneurs can also contribute in the COVID crisis? So looking at the panel, I see the result is 58% believe we'll be closer to a better capitalism, 14% to a worse capitalism, and 27% are undecided. So we have an optimistic group in the room, and that makes me happy. So let's hope that we can actually make that work. So coming back to the panelists again, does COVID currently affect your work? What could we do as social entrepreneurs? But please give me a 30-second answer.
Shall I go first?
Yes.
So of course, it affects everything. I think there is no one in the world that is not affected right now. And I think when it comes to the specific area I work within, social entrepreneurship, we don't see the full effect yet of how will the social entrepreneurs come out of this crisis, and also what effect will it have on the vulnerable and marginalized people that they work with. Our stand is that we are standing by our partners also now, and I think now is the time to come together. When it comes to the whole IKEA, I would say that this moment in time spurs all our co-workers to be intrapreneurs. We have created guidelines and structures to delegate all the decisions way out in the different local communities to see what is needed and how can we be of best use. And maybe you have seen that we have worked together with many of our suppliers, be they social entrepreneurs or regular suppliers, to also start to work with producing protective gear and other things that can have immediate effect. So I would say, despite the very troublesome times, this is when intrapreneurship can be at its best.
Mm-hmm. Quickly, Harald, any quick comments?
Very quickly. You had two questions. So how is it affecting the work that we do? Obviously, as people are supposed to stay at home, we cannot conduct health camps and health education sessions at the community level. And unfortunately, the anyway weak health systems are not getting stronger those days. So while in the past 50 minutes, 25 kids under the age of 5 have died of malaria only, this will worsen, and we need to prepare once we can go out again, that we are spot on and have a laser-like focus on what we usually do. What can we do today during the crisis? Basically staying at home. It's the first thing. Secondly, we can connect people. We can make them aware of the broader company programs that exist. For example, linking entrepreneurs in country to the local Novartis country manager and maybe allow them to tap into the $20 million fund that Novartis has put out a week or 10 days ago.
Okay, fantastic. And Catal, maybe your final words?
Yes, so that's obviously, like everybody else, affected us, moving our courses online with what that implies, but business continuity through moving online, having our faculty members sharing insights from their research to see how we can navigate the turbulence of the crisis. They're not medical professionals or researchers, but yet they can inform from their own disciplines. And finally, a great engagement from our alumni community to echo what Osa was saying, that it has generated a strong sense of community and of entrepreneurship within that community, with our alumni creating what's called the Project Green Cross to try and match needs and supply demands in every country where they are located in the world.
Perfect. Okay, great. So we're running a little bit out of time in terms of doing now a longer Q&A session. If the panel does have a little bit longer time, what I would say is that we move the Q&A to in a couple of minutes after we've done our closing. And for those that can still stay on, we can do that because we see many great questions coming up. But unfortunately, we have such a limited time. So what I'd like to do now is to actually hand back over to Daniel, who will share a couple of final thoughts. And if the panel can stay on for a couple of minutes after the timing of the panel, then we can do a little bit more Q&A at the end. So thank you so much to all of you. This was actually super helpful to get the practitioner's perspective in here as well next to the research. Yeah, great to see that all of you are already committed to specific actions on Corona and COVID. So thank you very much. I'll hand over back to Dan at this second.
Yes, thank you also from my end. I think it's really inspiring to see what is going on with entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs around the world. We have heard that one of the key aspects of actually working in social entrepreneurship is how to make the case for the company. So how to connect it to key outcomes for the parent company. Now that is why we have conducted our quantitative research, which is focused on connecting social entrepreneurship to the key performance metrics at companies. So you can find this on the URL that we're showing here. Basically, it's simple experiments that we've set up with the companies to actually measure how it can influence, for example, employee retention on talent acquisition, but also sales or productivity. One example is, for example, we've come up with a experiment design that shows two job descriptions. One is focused on the social entrepreneurship initiative and ask people to apply, while highlighting what the company is doing in the social entrepreneurship space, and the other isn't. And we're trying to find out how does it influence the quality and the quantity of the applications that are coming in. We've conducted 4 experiments so far, and this report here is very much an interactive report. Again, you can download that on the website, but we've already found a couple of really interesting correlations. One is that it obviously impacts positively employee engagement, and there is a quantitative number now behind this. It does impact brand equity, so it actually also in the end includes then willingness to purchase. It helps to embed purpose within the organization, and as I mentioned, it does actually influence the willingness to pay in certain product categories for customers. You can read all the details in our extensive report, but there you can also access our database of proof points for social entrepreneurship. So if you're trying to make a case as a social entrepreneur for your initiative at the company, you can access the website to look at what are the proof points from literature, but also from these experiments on how social entrepreneurship affects your company. You can also download concrete experiments if you want to run this at home. So you can go to your company and actually implement experiments that highlight the correlation with key metrics that matter to you. There's more to come in 2020 and 2021. If you're interested in social entrepreneurship, do reach out to us, especially on this topic. Now, we've also heard that many companies, including the companies of the panelists on today, were already acting positively towards this current crisis. Another thing that the team has put together here is on the Business as Unusual website, you can access a database of challenges that emerging and developing countries are facing at the moment. And I think when we look at what's already happening in countries like Brazil or India, we can see how heavily this is going to impact those economies in the future, even more so than it impacts us here in Europe and the US. So take a look at that webpage and take a look at that database if you are wondering how can your company engage in resolving and alleviating some of the challenges that we're facing in this current crisis. Take it away and just start acting internally, or reach out to us if you want to get active. It's a good pool of over 60 challenges that the companies we're working in actually facing today. Another exciting thing to come is that we will also publish a playbook for anyone who wants to design social entrepreneurship support in companies. So if you're interested in not just engaging in social entrepreneurship, but also implementing support structures within your organization, then stay tuned. There is an extensive fellowship and program review. We've looked at a couple of dozens of programs and initiatives by companies that actively support social entrepreneurs, and have put together their best practices and learnings. Most importantly, and this is now where I feel a bit like Steve Jobs at the end of a big iPhone presentation, there's also one more thing. We have acted on these insights that we've created as well to build a unique new platform for social entrepreneurs from across the world. Together with Porticus and the World Economic Forum's Schwab Foundation, we will be starting this program later this year. It's an incredible initiative that we're super lucky to be able to start to support entrepreneurs across different sectors, across industries, but also help them to position their initiatives with the board and therefore accelerate the transformation of their companies. I'll hand it over to Pavitra for a few words. Pavitra is joining us from the Schwab Foundation, and she'll tell us more about the context of the program. So thanks for joining us, Pavitra. Over to you.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Daniel, Ruby, and Yunus Social Business team. My name is Pavitra Raja, and I'm representing the Schwab Foundation. Our community includes approximately 400 social innovators in more than 190 countries worldwide. We are delighted to partner with Yunus Social Business, Porticus, and INSEAD on this report and supported the research because corporate entrepreneurs bring the much-needed entrepreneurial capacity to large, systemized private entities. They're shaping the future of business and driving change from inside out. To recognize the ecosystem of social innovators, the board of Schwab Foundation also took a strategic decision in 2019 to create a community of social innovators that included also our corporate social entrepreneurs. In January 2020, we hosted the World Economic Forum's 50th annual meeting, 50 years of promoting stakeholder capitalism, pioneered by Professor Klaus Schwab, not only the founder of the World Economic Forum, but also the co-founder of the Schwab Foundation. At a time where the world has caught up and recognized the crucial role corporations can play and should play in society and in sustainably managing our planet as well. In Davos, we, for the first time, in collaboration with Yunus Social Business, organized a CEO-level session on corporate entrepreneurs with Harold here from Novartis, AXA, Porticus, Medtronic, and also Barefoot International, to put forward social entrepreneurship as a fundamental tool towards achieving stakeholder capitalism, but also recognizing that it needs C-level support. We're excited to team up with Yunus Social Business again, and also Porticus, to launch the Impact Pioneers program to support entrepreneurs on their journey and encourage social entrepreneurship partnerships as well. Thank you so much for this, Daniel, and over to you.
Thanks, Pavitra. And just to give you a bit of a feeling of what this program is going to look like, the Impact Pioneer program, as we term it, is going to focus on bringing together social entrepreneurs across different sectors. It's a 12-month support programs, and it will include peer-to-peer support. We've heard that social entrepreneurs are really lacking the access to peers, other entrepreneurs, and would like to exchange. It does include world-class mentoring, as any good accelerator program does, but for social entrepreneurs, there is little of that kind of support out there. So we're super excited that we're having the opportunity here to partner with Porticus and the Schwab Foundation. It will include executive gatherings so that the board members of the companies participating will also be part of that conversation to transform the companies. And it will include a global platform to bring more visibility to this nascent concept of social entrepreneurship. It's also an effort for us to quickly accelerate how companies think about their purpose. Social entrepreneurs and their boards will have to sign a pledge for transformation when joining the program. So we're really trying to make sure that this is going to be a transformative journey. So if you're interested, if you're part of a company, if you're a social entrepreneur and you're interested in joining this program, please reach out to us and start your transformative journey. And now, with a few more minutes left, hopefully for attendees and panelists alike, I'll hand over back to Saskia for answering some of the Q&A questions we've received.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks to those panelists that can still make it, and for those in the audience that are still interested. So we had a lot of questions. One, and I think that's very important, and maybe Harald, you can answer that. What's the difference between social entrepreneurship or social business and CSR? That's coming up all the time. Like, everyone's very confused. So maybe Harald, if you can help us with that answer, that would be very important.
Well, there need not be a difference, but the traditional difference is that corporate social responsibility very much has a philanthropic only background. So many big corporations treat corporate social responsibility as a philanthropic initiative, whereas social business links societal externalities with the main business and allows to also leverage this to the core operations of the enterprise. That's the main difference.
Okay, perfect. I think that's a good answer. So what Harald is doing with Novartis Social Business is actually also selling, let's say, very affordable medication, which means that he can generate revenues from that rather than just giving everything out for free, which would be the old CSR approach. So just to kind of understand, there's a business model behind it. Even though the social intention is the main driver. So I think that's the difference between social business or social intrapreneurship here and the typical CSR approach, just so everyone understands that. We're also getting some more questions. For example, how can corporations identify social entrepreneurs and help them build a career within the company? So how have they found, let's say you, Harald, or you, Asa, I mean, how does that work within a corporation? Maybe Asa, you can talk about that first for IKEA.
Sure. Well, hopefully they know who their entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs are already. But I guess for us, the ones who are applying for our accelerator programs as advisors or coaches are the ones that are really stepping forward, wanting to do an extra mile or many miles together with the social enterprises. So of course, that is one way of identifying them, but I think there are very many ways. But we have seen that we actually treat this as a job announcement in our internal portal. So you should really put some effort into why you want to do this and how dedicated you are and what you want to learn and what you will bring back afterwards. So, and I think that has been a very good approach to find people who are very dedicated.
Yeah, but maybe also just to come in on that one, I think the question that's behind what a variety of people are asking is, if I'm a corporation now, how do I get started? You know, there is no unit yet. There is no Novartis Social Business. I'm a new corporation. How do I get started? Do you have any advice for sort of the future potential social entrepreneurs or corporations? Any of them, probably Asa and Harald.
Yes, if the corporation says we want to get started with intrapreneurship, that is a wrong start already. Huh? What the company can do is to foster a speak-up culture and to appreciate people who question the status quo all the time. So I can't tell you, for example, how the company Novartis identifies potential intrapreneurs. I can only tell you how I identify people who want to change and who want to bring about a different perspective. It's simply those people who question me, why are you doing it like this? Why not the other way? Then I see there is some intrinsic motivation to do something differently, to do something better. And supporting this perspective is all you can do, and this is already enough.
The report also shows that it's really creating that culture, as Harald say, and then, you know, it's a bottom-up process. From the top, what could happen is to identify, you know, some pioneers, shed light on them, and then encourage others to join. But it's really about providing a culture, an organizational culture that foster social entrepreneurs to grow.
I think
Yeah,
that's
if you want to change the company